so I'm going to call the regular scheduled Board of Trustees meeting for October 19th to order. It is 7 o'clock right on the dot. Would you all please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please, Clerk Trapp. Bartholomew.
Here.
Edwards.
Here.
Fowler. Hart.
Here.
Poznansky.
Here.
Seidel.
Here.
President Malzahn. Here.
Perfect.
6. Yes, we have one absent. Thank you. We
One
have a quorum.
absent,
Just before I begin, I just would like everybody to know that Al Lapierre and Tim Metz are typically in attendance to the meetings, and I asked them, again, just with social distancing in mind, there wasn't anything on the agenda that, any special purchase requests, so I asked them to just sort of monitor on the Facebook live stream. So if anybody has any questions for them, certainly filter that to me, and I'll try and get those answered. But that's why they're not here tonight. Thank you, Chief Dan, for coming to help us with our temperature taking. So let's move on. In the agenda, we have the approval of the minutes. You have at your table 2 closed session minutes, June 15th and July 20th. Has everybody had an opportunity to review those?
Yes.
We have a motion to approve the the June 15th meeting minutes for the closed session.
I'll make a motion to approve the July 15th?
It's June.
June 15th?
June 15th, yes, thank you.
Minutes?
Support.
All right, so we have a motion by Edwards, we have support by Hart. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? 6-0. What's nice to not have to do roll call after each one. You have a closed session for July 20th in your packet. That's the blue sheet. Has everybody had an opportunity to read that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Motion to approve the closed session meeting minutes from July 20th.
I'll make the motion to approve.
Okay, we have Seidel.
Support.
Support by Poznansky. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, you also have copies of the September 21st meeting minutes and the October 7th meeting minutes in your packet.
Make a motion to approve September 21st.
Okay,
Support?
with Bartholomew, we have Edwards. Any discussion on the September 21st? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and then you have the October 7th meeting minutes. We have a motion to approve those.
I'll make a motion to approve the October 7th meeting minutes.
We have a motion by Edwards. We have
I'll
support.
second. I'll support.
Support by Seidel. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any
I will
opposed?
abstain as I wasn't here.
All right, so I'm sorry, so that was 1 abstain. Okay. All right, in your packet, you have the approval of the bills. You have a check register report in the total of $170,234.35. And you have the vendor report, which is $48,797.89. We have a motion to approve the bills.
Motion to approve the bills.
There's a motion by Bartholomew,
Support?
support by Edwards. Discussion. Roll call, please. Bartholomew,
Yes.
Edwards,
Yes.
Seidel,
Yes.
Poznansky,
Yes.
Hart,
Yes.
President Malzahn. Yes. Motion carries 6-0. Perfect. Under special presentations, we had Todd Robinson down. He indicated to me that he has another meeting. He was not sure that he was going to make it tonight. In advance of that, he did send me an update to the Romeo Middle School building, and so I told him that I would just read it if he didn't make it to the meeting. So if you would just indulge me, I'll just read his correspondence.
Do you want to approve the agenda first? Or?
Oh, did I skip one? I'm sorry. Approval of the agenda. Oh, all right. We have a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make the motion.
Okay. We have a motion by Seidel. We have support by Hart. Is there any additions or deletions?
I'm just going to assume it was a mistake. We usually have public forum for agenda items only in here after correspondences, and it's just not on there. So just throw that in there.
So you want to add agenda item public comments after 7?
Yeah, we usually, because that one's usually just agenda items only at that point.
Yes. Okay, so we will, settled use, is your motion still good to include that inclusion?
Yes.
Okay. Hart, you're still support?
Yes.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Okay. Now, let me read this correspondence. It says, "Dear Ms. Malzahn, I'm reaching out as a follow-up to the conversations we've had over the past several months in regards to the district's plans for the school building at 297 Prospect. As you know, the 2016 construction bond included plans for the consolidation of our 2 middle schools. This fall, the new Romeo Middle School opened in the building on 32 Mile Road, formerly known as the Romeo High School facility. We are very excited for the work that was completed last year to provide an updated school building for our middle school students. Despite the COVID-19 pandemic, we were able to complete the renovation and start school there this fall. As we transition to the next phase of construction projects set forth in the 2016 Capital Projects Bond, we are now planning for the razzing of the old building on Prospect. Prior to the pandemic, we had great plans to celebrate the closing of the facility with students, staff, alumni, and community members. We all know that was interrupted and not possible with all the restrictions we have faced. It is still the intent of the district to follow through with the demolition project on the timeline we had originally planned. Exact dates are not confirmed, as they will be tied to the awarding of contracts by the Romeo School Board of Education over the next 2 months. It is my hope that this memorandum will give the Village of Romeo leadership an overview of the events and timeline. I am happy to join your team at future meetings to provide further updates and answer any questions." So the sequence of events, although the dates are not final, so they're subject to change. October 12th, the Board of Education received an update at their regular meeting. October 19th, the Board of Education Facilities Subcommittee meeting. The project was discussed as part of their agenda. October 31st through November 7th is a tentative possible one-day community opportunity to visit the building. November 28th through 30th is a virtual auction. It will be advertised for 3 weeks prior in multiple publications. He does not say where.
Can you say that date again really quick?
The November 28th through the 30th.
Thank you.
December 1st through January 22nd will be abatement projects. January 25th through March 12th, demolition projects. April 22nd through April 2nd, site restoration. Due to gathering restrictions and safety protocols in place at all of our schools, we will not be able to hold an in-person community forum to share this information as was originally planned. I have been in contact with the Historic District Commission and will join them at their meeting on October 2nd for an update. The Mitt TV doesn't normally record those meetings as a side note, but we have asked them to record that so that you can hear this presentation from Todd himself. So look for that out on Vimeo or on the Mitt TV's website. We will continue to share information through our Board of Education meetings and other communications via print and social media. We hope to share an on-demand video overview of the project and timeline once they are approved. We are attempting to allow the community one last opportunity to visit the building within the Health Department safety guidelines we must adhere to. If we are able to make this happen, it will be held on or before November 7th, and we will ask the village's help in publicizing the event once it's set. Once the project is underway, the site will be fenced off and there will be no unauthorized access. We're working directly with Barton Mallow Construction, who is overseeing the project and will provide a direct contact line for any concerns the residents might have. At this time, there are no formal plans for the property once the demolition is complete. The site will be restored and will remain vacant until such a time that the Board of Education chooses to engage in conversation about future plans. It will be important for us to offer the opportunity to hold a forum with the residents from the Village of Romeo to hear their input. It is my full intent to provide that opportunity when the appropriate time comes. If there are any further questions your team may have, please feel free to contact me and let him know if I would like him to join a future meeting. So, an update. Yes, Todd reached out to me. I put him in contact with the Historic Society, He's asking for them to facilitate a one-evening event in which the public would be able to follow a very specific path with social distancing and masks if they wanted to actually go in and take a walk down memory lane in the old middle school, see the fireplace. I think there's a historic classroom upstairs, and there's a couple of other areas that are of particular interest. So please watch for any announcements on that if you're interested in the middle school. So.
Can I ask you a question to maybe address with Todd? I was told that we have a street on that property that was, it's on our plot map. Will we be getting that back? Will the street come back through the property, or how will that work?
So at this time, the village has no authority over that site. It's owned by the school, and it was, I don't know if it was actually vacated when they purchased that parcel. But when the site goes up for bid and there is a builder that comes in or a developer that wants to look at that point, then the village would be able to sort of sit down and negotiate that out. So depending on what their plans are for whether it's, I mean, it's zoned residential, so I would anticipate that it would be residential, but we don't know what somebody would bring forward to us. It certainly remains in our master plan that that site would be residential.
So are you saying then that you think we gave that street to the school at that time?
Do you recall that, Mr. Clark? I'm sorry, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I do not know the answer, if we actually gave it to them or if it was just...
I do not know the answer to that question either. I would suggest looking at not only the existing plat maps, but old plat maps to see. My understanding is it was on the north end of the property, and whether or not there was physical structure built on it, or whether it's along, there is what appears to be somewhat of a driveway along the north end. I think they use the north end of the building for an industrial arts education, I believe. And then as you go east into the parking lot that's along Prospect, that road may still be there. If it was vacated, there should be a record of it. If it was not, it would still belong to the village.
Okay.
As is the current walkway. So that will still remain intact too, that goes between the two houses leading over to the middle school. So even if the middle school site is developed, that walkway will still remain intact.
Okay, good.
Okay. Correspondences. We have received no correspondence that needs to be noted. Public comments. So at this time, is there anybody in the audience that wishes to address this board on any agenda item? Hearing none, we can move on to our officer reports. President's report for October 19th, 2020. Community Shred Day with Bruce Township was a huge success. I was there. Want to thank Richard Corey and Clerk Trapp. There were 3 serve students that all helped us unload and shred over 70 residents' carloads, trunkfuls, and boxes of unwanted paper. Supervisor-elect Mike Philbrook and I are looking towards joint community cleanup day in the spring of 21. We hope to not only include shredding, but another electronic recycling day. We hosted that jointly with Bruce Township last year, and that was a big success. And we're possibly looking into a hazardous waste collection day. Washington Township did this. I reached out to Kathy Boshier. She indicated to me that she negotiated that with their waste hauler. So I reached out to GFL and was shocked at the price that I received. So it's $13,000 for, I believe, a minimum of 100 vehicles, and then it's $40 per vehicle after that. So that may not be optional, but I'll continue to look out. I asked Supervisor-elect Philbrook if who their waste hauler was out in Bruce Township, and we'll just look around to see if there are any other companies that we might be able to offer that. I think there's probably a lot of us that have old paint cans of paint and whatnot that we may need to look to dispose of, but it's a pretty hefty price tag, and I was surprised. Item number 2, I'm happy to report that the TAP grant for the Enhanced Pedestrian Crosswalk project was successfully submitted. The application included letters of support from our village planner, Steve Casson, County Commissioner Don Brown, and the Macomb County Department of Roads. So SEMCOG is currently reviewing all submissions. Hopefully they will make the announcement for the grant recipients by next summer. In September, Hubble, Roth, and Clark completed the data collection portion for the PACER study of our roads. This previous study was done in 2017. There was a grant that we were awarded to cover the cost of that, and that was awarded last year. And so the work just got done with the glacial pace of government in September. So again, the previous study was done in November of 2017. An initial glance at the data, as feared, showed significant decline in the condition of our roads. It's not a surprise to anybody. Once I receive the completed report, I'll ask James Vitrino, our consultant, to update the asset management plan that he presented back in February so that we can still take a look at our road plan that he presented for our assets management plan. I'm hoping to schedule that goals and objectives workshop meeting in February or March so we could take a look at that project as standalone. I think, again, we discussed there was a $6 million price tag with a multi-year project, and it would certainly require a bond proposal if we needed to address that. Again, those goals and objectives workshops, they're public noticed meetings. The public is welcome to attend. They are on live streamed, and they're recorded, the last one that we had last year. So if anybody wanted to take a look at what our goals and objectives were, as well as our budget workshop meetings and the budget that we adopted at our formal meeting, those are all recorded public meetings, and you're welcome to attend. I attended 3 days of webinars last week, the last week of September. The classes were part of the Michigan Municipal League's annual conference. Due to COVID, everything was changed to remote Zoom meetings or Microsoft Teams gatherings. But again, very informative. I've already put some of the new information into action, such as developing or looking to develop an interactive website specifically for our master plan and the Village to City report that would allow for direct feedback from anyone using those tools available. And Catherine and I are also looking at utilizing a new Facebook feature that I learned about that would use the Village Hall Facebook page to create notifications instead of the third-party app like Nixle that we talked about last month. So that would be free, and there is a new built-in feature. So we're looking at that to see how we can better utilize that for pop-up notifications that come on your phone, not just a Facebook notification. I attended an informational meeting on October 15th hosted by the Parks and Rec Director, Clara Russell. Also in attendance was Supervisor Richard Quarry and Greg Breinart. The focus of the meeting was to provide an overview of what Parks and Rec does, its current commission, how it was formed, and how it functions, as well as a question and answer period for the newly elected Bruce Township Board, as well as the candidates on the November ballot for the Washington Township trustee position. So it was very informative. I think I just saw that posted on social media today, so if anybody wanted to tune into that presentation, that's out there. And then just one quick community announcement, trick-or-treating in the village. We've been getting so many phone calls. Everybody wants to know if Halloween is still on. And I say, look, a municipality doesn't mandate Halloween. So, yep, Halloween is still going to happen on October 31st. But we did agree at our last month's meeting to close down Van Dyke from Newberry to Washington for trick-or-treating in the village. So that is this Saturday, the 24th, from 11 to 1. The police department will sound the siren to begin and end. The Parks and Rec will also be holding a DJ dance party in the Village Park from 12 to 4, limited to 100 attendees. I do not believe they're having a costume contest like they have traditionally in the past, but hopefully everybody will still have a good time. The siren will also sound on Saturday, October 31st, 6 o'clock to begin, 8 o'clock to end Halloween festivities. Please remember, all of these events are by voluntary participation, both on the business and the homeowners, as well as the families attending. Everyone is encouraged to use social distancing and wear face coverings. That concludes my report for October. Clerk Trapp, do you have a report?
Yes, the audit is just about wrapped up. We are now wrapping up some loose ends, not getting too many more emails from them, so I think we should hear from them shortly, and probably in the next 10 days as to our completion. The roof replacement at the cemetery is underway. Shingles in the dumpster have been delivered. New gutters will also be replaced. I believe we are scheduled to be done by the end of the week, weather permitting. And I would just like to take this time to apologize to the trustees for incomplete board packets recently. I am working on correcting that issue. That is all I have.
Treasurer Maddox?
great news. I'm excited to announce that the 2020 tax was balanced and settled out with the county a couple of weeks ago. I want to thank everyone that helped me out at Bruce Township, Washington Township, but more importantly, Tim, our accountant out in the audience. Without his hand-holding through the whole process and just how we were receipting through the new BS&A accounting system, he's awesome. He rocks it. And also, I want to recognize Cindy Wilson and Chris Pilarski as well for processing the tax. So, and that concludes my report. If you have any questions.
All right, thank you. Trustee reports. Anybody want to start? Trustee Bartholomew, anything to report at this time?
Nope.
Trustee Posanski?
I would like to say that we had another successful trustee talk. This time it was only me. Trustee Fowler was unable to attend. Good time, good questions, a lot of questions and answers going on. I was wondering, last month when we were talking about correspondence time on the agenda, President Malzahn, you referred to that you had consulted legal and that it was in the village law, and I have been unable to find that. So I'm wondering if I could ask Mr. Clark to address this. Where would I find this in the village law, that correspondence time on our agenda is only for president?
No, I never said it was just for the president, excuse me. It's actually a performance duty by the clerk. She is the secretary to the board, so she is the one that would receive and properly distribute and address any correspondence that was received by the village.
Okay.
So it's not for me, it would be for the clerk.
Okay.
And I'm certainly that I can ask Mark to send you, or look that up. I'll give you the sites.
I just asked him. I just asked him, so Mark, could you let me know where to find that at?
Well, if the council says it's okay, sure, I can.
He would need to write a formal public opinion, so again,
Okay.
following Robert's Rules of Orders, right? You'll please direct your questions to me, and then I'll get you the answer. So I'm happy to do that, and that's perfect. I'll look and I'll try and get you the answer of where that documentation is.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else in your trustee report?
Not at this time. Oh, actually, yes. Could you define that then, the correspondence? We all have emails from residents who ask for letters to be read right now, and they weren't read during correspondence. So could we do some clear-cut guidelines, write it down so that the people can understand what the correspondence time means?
Correspondence, again, is any formal notification or letter that is submitted to the Village of Romeo. It's typically done by another body. So I might get a letter from another municipality that I would need to make everybody aware of. So it's under correspondence. I get those. They're date stamped. They're usually included in your packet so that you have a copy of that correspondence as well, and I acknowledge it from that point forward.
So when the
It's not always
residents-
limited to that, but most people, for correspondence, would be a business-related matter.
Okay.
For public comment, such as the two that were received, those will be read and addressed under public comment.
Okay. Just so
So,
that everybody
yep.
knows that nobody is upset when it's not read at correspondence time. If you, as a resident, write in an email to be read, it will be done at the end at comments.
Well, we're going to address that actually in an updated policy and rules of procedure that's going to require, and we'll talk about that a little bit further, around Bill 1108 that the Senate passed. So that should address that situation because of the meeting environment that we're in under COVID and what we can and cannot do with CDC guidelines. So we need to develop some clear rules and procedures
Okay.
that we can put into place. So we'll
Good.
talk about that a little bit later on agenda, new business B.
Okay.
Nothing here?
Okay. Trustee Hart?
I have nothing.
Okay.
All
Trustee
set, thank
Saito?
you.
All set. Perfect. Okay, there was no planning commission meeting. They had no agenda items, so there's nothing to report on the planning commission side. There are no committee reports at this time, so let's move on to our unfinished business. I have a village to city update that I just wanted to provide. There seems to be a lot of misinformation that's out there There's a lot of misinformation that was reported at some of the trustee talks that were there. So I just wanted to clarify and go over the phases that we talked about so that everybody really understands the process and where we're at with this. Phase one was to, and so just to back up, we started talking about this a year ago in October, if not prior to that, in conversations that I would engage with past leadership and other leadership of other boards. So it wasn't something new that was talked about, but I was made aware of a presentation that was happening, presented by the Michigan Municipal League, of which the village is members, in Lansing, to present the case for why a municipality would become a city or entertain that. I had registered myself. I offered it to any of the trustees who wanted to attend. Trustee Hart wanted to attend, so I registered myself and him. At the last minute, my father-in-law passed away and I was unable to attend, and I asked Trustee Seidel to attend in my absence. So they went to that in October, and they brought back the information package, which I also downloaded, and I believe I passed out most of those handouts when we originally started talking about this at our goals and objectives workshop meeting and other subsequent meetings, that we were still entertaining this notion and what it would mean for the Village of Romeo to become a city. So the phase one of this project would be to establish a committee or task force to discuss the possibility of incorporating into a city and provide a recommendation to the Village Board of Trustees. So that's what we voted on back early in the budget. I asked for a not-to-exceed budget of $10,000 in the formation of that committee. I did select those committee members, mostly made up of one representative from each of our boards and commissions, as well as quite a few, well, not quite a few, I think there were 4 residents. There was a 5th that I had invited. She ultimately declined to serve on that committee. But that committee met over a 5-month period of time. And what they were tasked with was really investigating the rules, regulations, the benefits, and the data involved, so that we would have a clear understanding of specifically how the Village of Romeo would be affected if they decided to move this forward, right? I didn't feel we would be doing our due diligence without having a comprehensive report that would address most of everybody's concerns and questions. So that's why it was really great and beneficial to have a diverse subcommittee that was engaged in reaching out to their neighbors and their friends and asking, what do you think about this? What do you hear? What is your concern? So that the committee could then get the answers and have those all in one comprehensive report. That report was submitted back to Village Council, I believe that was in July. And based on their findings, was recommended that this proposal be put to a vote of the people. The proposal actually requires 2 votes of the people. The first one would be to actually put a petition forward that says, hey, do you like this idea? Here, look at the report. Do you want to entertain becoming a city? The second one would be at the same time that you would have the option to say yes or no, you would also have the option to elect a charter commission. So the charter commission's mission, again, not made up of any of us, not any of this board. They're separately elected people, and they actually write the charter. So if anybody has a concern, they have a question, they have something that they want to protect, some rules or procedures that they want followed, those are drafted in the charter so that you actually have a say in how do we want to protect the Village of Romeo. Maybe ultimately we don't want to change the Village of Romeo into a city, or maybe we want to be the city of the Village of Romeo so that we can, again, better protect our identity. And then once that charter is drafted, goes back and forth to the state for their approval, and then it's actually put back on the ballot so that all of the residents can review that charter and understand the change in governance. It's adopted. If it's adopted, then the change takes place and we actually become a city. At that time, you would elect a city commission. So you would elect a mayor instead of a president. You would possibly say in that charter that you want to hire a city manager, and then you would have a mayor who would just simply be a figurehead and run the meeting minutes. You would say that you want a board of 6 commissioners, or you want 9 commissioners, or whatever that number is determined by that charter commission. That's really sort of how that works. And then you move into actually becoming a city. The city runs on top of the townships. So right now, as you know, we're split between both townships. The village is split between both townships. The city would run as its own entity. So we would have an equal say. We would have control over all of our millages and all of our tax rates that are on the residents. Right now, as part of that report, and I encourage you all to sort of read that, I'm just giving you the brief overview. There is a tax disparagement in between Bruce Township and Washington Township that would equalize that. There is no risk of detachment that was reported on. There is also no potential that this process makes us grow. The village of Romeo, the city of Romeo, will never become Sterling Heights, right? We don't have the room to become Sterling Heights. We hope that we have, the population numbers, again, in that report that shows how static we really are. We're not growing. We have people coming in, we have families moving out, we have death rates that happen, but overall, the village has stayed static. The only growth that we hope to see would be that of our industrial park and possibly annexation, the new properties that need water and sewer service, which the village is actually able to provide. That would be Armada Township and the one parcel in Ray Township. So that report is very comprehensive. It is available on our website. I'm happy to email it to anybody if you want. If you need a copy of it, Clerk Trap has some available as well. So again, take a look. We are hoping once COVID is over, we're not under any CDC guidelines for limitations of people in a room, that we can then engage the residents better in town hall meetings, so that if you have questions, if you have some concerns, if you have some comments and feedbacks, we would love to hear that. But at this point, the report is done, and this committee, or this village council, has decided to put it before a vote of the people, and that's the most important part. So as part of that work, to get it on your ballot, we had to launch a formal incorporation project and proceed with the following remaining steps. We have to create a certified boundary survey, which is a legal description. We have one that we're working from. I'm working to get cost estimates, and we're hoping to bring that back for an expenditure. I think it's going to be about $1,200. I'm not certain on that. We need a map of the proposed village boundary to be attached to a circulating petition. We need to develop an inventory of any shared assets and liabilities of the village and the 2 townships, and develop a settlement plan. So that dialogue, again, is going to be part of me reaching out to Supervisor-elect Sam Praviti, Supervisor-elect Mike Philbrook, and we're going to talk about any shared assets that we do have. So we also have to reach out and talk to Parks and Rec, because certainly that's a partnership that we would want to remain in. You may have heard some dialogue that they want to change their commission to possibly include a representative from the village of Romeo, and change that set up the voting authority between the 2. Again, Bruce Township already approved that. Washington Township has yet to address that on a board vote level. But those are the sorts of dialogues that we would take a look at. How does Bruce Township's ownership of our sewer facility and what they rent from us, how is that affected? So those are all pieces of the pie that I'm investigating, so that I can bring those answers, so that everybody has an understanding of how our assets are going to be affected. The 5th step of phase 2, which is to prepare the petition language and form. We have to submit a draft petition with the survey map to the State Boundary Commission for a preview and input. With the work of the State Boundary Commission, as much as they are willing to finalize the petition before circulation. So all that work has to be done so that we can make a case for the state of why we think this is a good idea. We already have the data that shows exactly why we would benefit from this process. or not. If there's not public support for it, then it wouldn't move any forward. But we would gather a circulation of petitions for signatures. The number of signatures required are greater of 100 or 5% of the population of the city to be incorporated. So we have roughly 35 or 3,600 residents. We would need to get 5% of the population to sign the petition that says, yes, we want to put a ballot initiative together, so that when you get your ballot, whether it be in April of 21 or November of 21 or whatever the next opportunity for a vote of the public, it would be on that ballot. It's not on your November ballot now because we haven't completed all these steps, right? We're not looking to engage in a hurry-up petition. We really want your input. We want your feedback. We want you to understand how this benefits each and every household in the village of Romeo, or how you think it doesn't benefit us, so that, again, we can take that into account, into consideration.
What if we don't get enough petition signatures? Is it still continue?
No, it's one of the requirements that we would have to get 5% of the population of the proposed city.
Okay.
And we'll get that data from the census once that's completed. Again, I anticipate those numbers coming out next spring. I don't know that the date, because I'm not sure. They talked about ending it early, and I'm not sure if they're going to do that or not under COVID. But yeah, once we understand exactly how many residents we have to work with, then we'll establish that 5%, and hopefully we get more than that. But it would be ideal if we could, have the petition and hold the town hall meetings, so that at the same time people could say yes or no. Yes, I think this is a good idea, or no, I don't think this is a good idea, and then we'll have a better solid footing. But the work of that subcommittee, that Village to City Committee, really was just to provide the data, the backup documentation to answer the questions, so that you all can make an educated decision based on your opinions. And I just wanted to back up and clarify the expenditures, because I alluded that there was a not to exceed amount that was established for $10,000, and it was reported again at one of the trustee meetings that amount exceeded, the expenditures exceeded that amount. That is incorrect. If the amount that was spent was $9,847.50. So
Could I step in and clarify that? At my trustee talk this last week, that is where I said I had to FOIA the information, even though I asked and multiple people asked, we were not given an answer to that question about how much money was spent on this subcommittee. So sadly, I had to FOIA it, and with all the checks I was given, the total came to more than $10,000, which I found very hard to believe that the president would not listen to the committee. So I called our clerk that day, and I asked her, I said, Catherine, am I reading this right? Are all of these checks supposed to be included? I just want to make sure that I'm reading this right. And she said, well, she would go grab all the materials that I had, that she didn't have them in front of her, but she would go get what I was given in my FOIA, and then she would get back to me. And I have never heard back from her. So with that, could you tell me what I wasn't supposed to include in that number, that in the checks, all the information I was given, what was I not supposed to include in the total?
So let me clarify just a couple of items for you. Your FOIA request was very specific. You asked for copies of all of the invoices and all of the checks and expenditures that were initiated for the Village to City Committee. At no point in your FOIA request did you ask for a total.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You didn't request a total. So just under FOIA guidelines, just so that you are aware, if you needed...
I didn't ask for a total.
If
I apologize.
you needed clarification, right, if you need, I'm just pointing out the fact that...
I'm sorry, President, that's so petty. We're better than this.
Yes.
I called the clerk. We're better than that, you guys.
Trustee Poznanski, please, let me finish. I gave, the FOIA request was fulfilled to you over 3 weeks ago. At no point did you reach out to me to ask me that question.
It's a FOIA request coordinator is who I reached out to.
If you had a request, if you had a concern about the expenditures, every one of those expenditures were in your monthly packets. Every one of those expenditures were in your vendor bills all along, from February all the way up to July. and every single one of them was approved. So at any point in the process, anybody could have asked for an accounting of the total.
I did, and I
If
was
you
never
see,
given one.
again, I don't have an email, I don't have a request, I didn't get a phone call from you asking for that investigative work done. I just want to be clear about that. That did not come to me. 3 weeks went by. If you had the question and you were not getting an answer from Clerk Trapp, and perhaps she didn't, she's not obligated, again, to explain to anyone a FOIA request document.
No, I
When the
agree
FOIA
with that.
request
She's not
is
obligated
granted-
to, but reaching out in
Excuse me.
kindness and trying to define it, I thought we could cover it over the phone. We wouldn't have to be doing this right now.
Right.
We could have taken care of this.
Yep, a simple phone call to me would have clarified that. A simple phone call to
The
me.
FOIA coordinator.
Right? She fulfilled your FOIA. That's what I'm saying to you. She fulfilled your FOIA, and she fulfilled the other 5 or 6 FOIAs that have been requested. If there were questions, I am happy to give you an accounting of that. And I can tell you that specifically on February 3rd, on those invoices, there were 2 hours that were billed for the roads project by James Vitrano. On May 12th,
Hold on, can you, February 3rd, I'm sorry.
I can send you all of this in an email if you would like,
Oh,
the actual
sure.
accounting of it.
Yes.
I would have been happy to provide it to you in advance of false information being relayed to our residents, because that's what happened. You simply got the FOIA request, and then you gave a total, and it was an inaccurate representation of what you were asking for. So I just want to clarify to the public that we did not exceed the $10,000. If you do go back and you look at the FOIA request, you will also see that there are several line items that were zero charged to us because we
Yes, there were
were
discounts
taking,
given.
we were taking into account the budget. All along, we internally, myself and James Vitrano, were accounting for every expenditure set to that Village to City Committee.
Yes.
So I just want to clarify,
Well-
there was no exceeding of the not to
In my
exceed
FOIA
amount.
request, I'm sorry, I didn't bring it, I was going to read it so that everyone would know what I wrote in it. I asked for all bills, I asked for all invoices that had to do with the expenditures of the Village to City Committee. I received all those. I didn't think I needed to ask for a total, I suppose, because I can do simple addition, and I added all the checks together that were given to me, and it exceeded $10,000.
But the
So,
line
with that being
items-
said, I apologize for putting out information that wasn't correct. I did my best to try and figure it out. That's why I called you, Catherine. I did. I said, am I reading this right? Because I really found that hard to believe. And I never got a phone call back. So I went off of what I was given, and that was the information I gave to the people. I apologize. We were, what, $3 under 10,000?
No, it was $9,847.50. So we were about $153
Okay.
and some change under that budget.
Okay.
And each
Which-
one of those
Which I would still
invoices-
argue that this committee never gave to your subcommittee. Never at any point, if you look at the minutes, did this village council ever give that subcommittee any money?
Well, we got it now.
I don't know what that means.
I have no idea what you're even referring to.
What does that mean?
They
No.
approved the expenditure of the 10,000 of
When?
the not to exceed. That was
So
voted
here-
on and approved.
Here is the motion from March by, would you like me to say who it's by? Does it matter?
Not at this point.
Okay. To proceed with the development of the Exploration Committee with a budget to not exceed $10,000. From that time, this council never approved an Exploration Committee. Therefore, that $10,000 was never given to an Exploration Committee.
That motion approved for the formation of the committee.
And then we never made a committee.
We did, I did make a committee.
You made a committee and we
Yes.
never approved it.
It is
So
not
therefore,
it is
we
not a
never gave
general
you any
village
money.
law committee that requires ratification by this board. I do have the authority under the village, under my presidency, to establish work committees.
Yes,
Yes,
correct.
and that is one of them.
But
I
it never
reported
gives you
to
money.
I reported to you the names and the formation of that committee.
You told us, we never approved them.
It did
And
not
you do-
require a
I
vote for you.
completely agree, you do have the authority to make a committee,
Yes, I do.
but
And
never in
and
that
I-
definition does it say you get money for it.
That's why I asked for a not-to-exceed budget of $10,000, and it was passed.
That is not what this motion said, and there was never motions after it.
That was the intent, and that was the motion that was made.
Well, the intent is one thing. The minutes and what they say is the rules and the law.
All right, I'm going to move on to is there anybody who had any, who had any comments regarding the village to city status? I know we offered that up to public forum on initially, but I'm just allowing that if there's any feedback. Yes. Justin, could you please come up to the podium and give us your name and address?
Justin Parker, I live on Sisson Street, 259. In the phases that you discussed, when that information was supposed to be presented to the residents, my understanding and what I was informed was that was supposed to be done before you guys voted for this to continue. And that didn't happen in that manner. Even the people on your committee that you formed told me they left because they had no idea that they were going to be voted on it that night. So why did it continue when the residents had no idea? We could have all been informed before we continued to spend more money.
I'm not sure why you're under that impression. That report that was presented with consultant Vitrano and Elizabeth Miller did give an overview of
We
the
had a
scope of
summary.
work.
Correct.
They said in her remarks that she thought that it was best for this body to decide to move it forward to a vote of the people, and that's what we voted on. We have voted to move it forward, to finish phases, those other steps, 2 through 6, to get it on a petition before.
So before it was given
before
to
the
the
residents.
residents to analyze and absorb and bring feedback and comments?
Well, we made copies available. We made.
After the vote, yes.
No,
After the vote.
well, after that report was received.
And you voted to continue, then we got the information. as
It was
residents.
made available the very next day. I believe we had some reports
correct,
available at the
after the
meeting.
vote.
It's on our website now. Anybody can look it up.
Yeah,
And
so
yes.
after you voted to continue, then we got the information. You even made the comment about how you would make it available at that meeting in the weeks to
Yes.
come.
And we
When
did
we
that.
weren't informed before you voted to spend more money.
No, we have not voted yet to spend more money.
To
What
get it
we
on
have-
a ballot,
what-
that's
What
gonna
we
cost
voted
money,
to do
correct?
was to follow the other steps
And you said
in
you had
that
to get
process.
site plans and drawings and all this
Yes,
stuff done, which
that is
costs money.
correct.
Correct?
There will be a cost associated with that, yes.
Yeah, so before we were informed, and we had a chance to speak our mind as residents of the village, you continued to spend money.
No. No. In order for us to ask you to vote on this, we have to complete these steps.
Yeah, but we were supposed to get the
petition
information before
language-
it even went to that point. It's in the phase that you read.
The input is being sought from the residents through town hall meetings, through community engagement, through a survey. It's unfortunate that COVID has restricted our ability to
And
do
I
that.
respect that, but it still should have been given the option to the residents to speak their mind based on the information that we spent 10,000, 9,800, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
to continue. We should have been given an opportunity to
And you
analyze
are ge-
and spoke
Right.
before it was voted on to
You haven't
continue.
been, you haven't been denied any opportunity to do this yet.
But we were
because
supposed to
we
get that
haven't-
opportunity before you voted.
No. We couldn't
It's
have
in the
voted,
phase.
we could not have voted to accept the committee report and finish this phases until we were able to provide the answers
People on your committee
and all
told
of the
me
data.
that it wasn't supposed to be voted on that night. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
No, I respectfully disagree. And you can go back and watch Elizabeth Miller's presentation of exactly what she said as the chairman of that meeting.
I was here.
He was here.
And she left, along with other members of the committee.
Mm-hmm, they did.
Had no idea you were going to vote on it that night.
Okay, so I'm going to move on to our sidewalk repair status update. So we continue to do sidewalk repairs, much needed in the village. We have completed so far Minot, Wonder Lane, and some on Prospect, those houses that front Prospect but are actually side yards to Minot. So that's the scope of work. That work has been completed. They are actively working on North Main and Turner Street right now. They anticipate, weather permitting, moving to Bailey and Hollister Streets. And we've just issued letters to the residents for Dickinson and Dorsey. So, keeping a track of the budget, that's about 643 slabs. Now, just because the sidewalk has been marked, we may not do all 643 slabs. Trustee Bartholomew has reached out to several of the homeowners to offer an option for leveling, or there's some that we are actually going to negotiate that the DPW is going to be doing those repairs based on where a stop box is or some manhole covers. We discovered some manhole covers that are actually belong to Michigan Bell, that we have to figure out who owns Michigan Bell manhole covers, but we're gonna keep doing that. So I know we budgeted about $50,000 for this project. If we were to complete all 643 slabs, which again we're not, it would be about $102,000 work. We would anticipate, again, a 50% cost share with the residents, so we would get 50% of that money back, putting us right around our budget, I think, of $50,000 if we complete all of this before the end of this year or end of the fiscal year. So if the weather doesn't allow us to complete all of this fall, we can pick that back up in the spring and it would still be under this fiscal year's budget. So when it comes time for our budget and goals and objectives, I anticipate that this project, which is hugely popular by all the residents, they're very appreciative of the fact that we're actually getting the sidewalks fixed. We're getting it fixed at a revenue sharing option that's saving them some time and money. So I would hope that we would certainly continue that for many years to come, although it is a significant undertaking. And so we may need to take a look at the man hours that are associated with monitoring and manning and doing all the paperwork that's associated with this project. So just wanted to give you an accounting of where the sidewalks are at.
Christine, a couple people have asked me, can they get the same discounted rate if they just paid for the entire slab? If they're not in Nathan's scope of work and they have 5 slabs that they want to get done, is there a discounted rate if they just paid it in full and didn't involve the village?
Well, when
Or
we did the scope of work, when we looked at the sidewalk repair program, it really was identified to give us the biggest trip and fall hazard fix.
Okay.
Right? We didn't want to pay a cost share to somebody who just thought they wanted prettier
Well,
sidewalk,
that's why they're
prettier
saying
concrete.
they would cover it themselves. They're just
Right.
wondering if the rate that the contractor is giving the village would be, because everyone knows it's going to cost you a lot more money to go get a slab done yourself
Mm-hmm.
than even the combined price of the two.
Because they're
So-
doing them all kind of
Right.
consecutively.
It's-
That's the
it's-
problem.
It's discounted rate, right? And that's all they're asking. If they have 5 slabs that,
And they're doing the street anyway.
and they're doing,
Could they be
and they're
included?
doing the street, could they be included if they
That's
paid it
something
in
to look
full?
up.
The
And-
contractor is working with homeowners who may want additional work done. I did reach out to another local contractor who's doing some work and said, look, if you're going to meet this criteria, there's no point in us sending our contractor over if you're already pouring a driveway for somebody over on another street and we've identified 2 or 3 slabs in front of them. If you want to repair that at the same time you're having the truck there to repair the other work, yes, we would offer the cost share on those slabs because we've already flagged them. So I guess to answer your question, it's just on an individual basis of what the situation calls for.
Okay, so the homeowner would reach out to the contractor, I guess?
Yeah,
Okay.
or myself, and I can try and put them in contact with them because that's what we've been doing before. If they wanted an approach done or a driveway or,
Well, I
you know,
mean, just the
a
sidewalk
connecting
slabs is
sidewalk.
the,
Right.
the sidewalk slabs is the question, right?
Mhm.
Because if theirs didn't get the X or the arrow, they were just. So, okay,
Christine?
Thank you.
I've had a couple residents ask if there was a tree in the easement and the tree roots are what's causing the sidewalk to heave. Are they still responsible? How does that work? They're wondering what happened.
Unfortunately, yes, it is. It is the homeowner's responsibility for the sidewalk. What we are doing in this situation is having our contractor address the roots and cut them out so that we won't have a heave issue from that tree anytime in the near future. Trees grow, they're there as an asset to the property. It increases everybody's home value to have trees on their property. So yes, it is, if it's a village tree that's still in the easement, it is still the homeowner's responsibility, according to our ordinance. Again, I didn't draft the ordinance, I didn't put it in place, but, so we're just following that. That it is the homeowner's responsibility to maintain them from any trip and fall issues.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, under new business, we have an HDC ordinance 18-1 through 18-36 updates. Rod is here from the HDC to make his case for why we need to do this.
I'm Rod Porter, and I'm from the HDC, and I think everybody has looked at the ordinance. They have it. Just to give you some history on this, we've been trying to revise our ordinance to come in line with the city or the village dangerous building ordinance, so that they are working together. And we've had a lot of discussion over the last year on this. We've reviewed this with Mr. Clark a couple of times, with other members of the city or the village, and also Mr. Kaysen, the village planner. They've all looked at it, and what you see in front of you is what our results are. The bottom line is the HDC pretty much doesn't have any authority when it comes under the current ordinance to do anything if someone lets their property go to crap. We've seen this a couple of times already in the last couple of years, where the property owner just lets their building just decay, and then they come to us to ask us to demo that, and in some cases they've just gone off and demoed it even though we said no. And all we want to do now is just put a little bit more structure into the current HDC ordinance. And like I said, and have that bring up and be in line with the village's dangerous building ordinance.
Now, will this change the penalty at all?
Well, we talked about that. I addressed that with Mr. Clark. And unfortunately, a misdemeanor requires, there's a limitation put on what a fine could be. So you could look at making this a civil infraction, which is less of even a monetary penalty. You can look at taking this to circuit court for violations, adding this language in here that if they tear it down, that they would actually pay the cost to restore or replicate the resource that was unlawfully constructed, added to, altered, repaired, moved, evacuated, or demolished. I don't know that that's necessarily a bad thing, because if somebody didn't like their garage, then they could just, in theory, build a new one if they demoed it without a permit. So I think that there's a bit of work that we may need to do with a little bit of this wording. There's also...
Because we've gone back and forth on that, whether or not to keep it as a misdemeanor, and then the fine can only go above 500. Or like other ordinances, we've looked at probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 to 10 other villages, cities' ordinances. And Bay City, as an example, has a $10,000 fine. But we didn't want to go with that. We leave it as a misdemeanor. And that way it's easier for us to enforce, and because of the person that would own the property, if they happen to come in dire straits or whatever and they just can't keep the building up, we don't want to penalize them anymore. So just keep it down as minimal as what we could, and go with it that way. Because we have gone back and forth with that.
No, we definitely still want to protect our residents, and
Right.
For the people that, like you said, just might not be able to keep their properties
Right.
up. So we want to protect them at the same time as trying to stop this from happening. So
Correct.
I understand that. Thank you.
Right, yep.
All right,
So-
there's a scenario that's ongoing in the village right now, and it's been posed, so I said that I would mention this tonight, that would we include some language in here or some considerations if somebody demos something without a permit, and by which, if the court found, the misdemeanor valid, that would impose a 5-year rule that they wouldn't be able to erect another structure on their site. But what if they move, right? What if they decide they don't want to live in the village anymore and they decide they're just going to sell? So does that obligation, that ruling, stay with the property? Or does it just, is it just alleviated?
We have had some kind of discussion on that, and if a person tears down a building and they put their house up for sale and they sell it to a relative, maybe, or a friend, and 6 months later they turn around and buy it back from them, that's a loophole. If someone wants to be that, pardon my language, that sleazy, then okay. I mean, we can put some language in there to do that and say that the current homeowner can't buy back the property. But if a new homeowner comes in and they want to put a garage up or a shed or an addition on their house, whatever the case is, they go through the process to do that. Go ahead and draw out the plans, come to us, get the approval, and go for it. Don't have any problem with that. But if someone wants to be that kind of person to sell the house and turn around and buy it back within X number of days or months, whatever it is, and then be able to build back on what they've torn down, then, okay, we can leave that loophole in there if we want to.
Well, Mark indicated to me in the conversations that I had with him that he could, help us wordsmith some language that would close that loophole.
Okay.
It would obviously, require a little more work on our building department side. I'm not sure entirely who would research that, the lineage, I guess, associated with the property, if, that's something that we wanted to sort of take that into consideration. Or it can just be, if the homeowner demoed a barn or whatever structure without a permit and suffered, a loss in value of his property for 5 years because he can't rebuild anything. If he chooses to sell at that time, he would suffer the loss of, that restriction that would remain in place for whatever time would be in place. Again, it's sort of like another penalty that says, sorry,
It's
but.
basically a lien on their property, is basically what you're doing, right? Either a fine has to be paid off or the 5-year statute has to be met. Do you know what a city like Bay City does with something like that? I know they do a $10,000 fine, but if someone doesn't pay it, is there a lien on the property, or?
Yes.
So that stays
I
with
would think it would go to tax.
So that eliminates a pretty big go-around. Because it's really a demolition by neglect is what we're trying to eliminate, right?
Right. Right.
So-
But some have been demolished just to keep an open land for parking or some such thing, so that doesn't affect them. I mean, that probably won't be everybody by any means, but.
Right, it's an unfortunate circumstance of the situation, but I think that we probably need to look at some other rules or procedures for monitoring some of these structures that we know are dilapidated, right? We know that there are some, houses that, part of the roof is missing, right? And it needs to be, maintained as part of our ordinance enforcement. So I'm not sure where those controls lie and what the HDC's latitude is to make somebody, paint a house. If they've got exposed wood that's being, subjected to all of the elements, that needs to be painted and sealed so that the deterioration of the wood doesn't further progress. I mean, what's the options for that building and maintenance code that we've adopted? Is there some tie-in there to what are other municipalities doing for that?
Well, as far as the village is concerned, we do have an enforcement officer that does that, and then they would get letters, that property owner would get letters to take care of the property. If they don't abide by the letters and don't do that, then they can get ticketed for that.
Right.
Other cities, they do the similar thing. They usually have an enforcement officer from the local police department, like we do, that actually goes around and does that. So.
It's just normally initiated by, a resident complaint.
Yes.
And so there has to be really sort of a formal complaint on file to send an enforcement officer out there to take a look at the situation, and then you're correct, either ask them to remedy the situation or write them a citation. But I wish that there was, just better monitoring place or an option that we could keep closer eye on buildings before they got to that point.
Well, we have, and people on our committee actually, since we all live in the village, we do take walks around the village, and during some of our meetings, we discuss such and such a building, looks like they're doing something to it, or it's disrepair, or so on. And then we usually talk to Cindy Wilson and ask her, is the building occupied? And she can tell us that, and if it's not, then we can contact the enforcement officer and have them go out and take a look at it, and so on. And we've done that over our last few years, so, and we can continue to do that. That's not a problem with us.
I think if we were able to bring forward the rental property inspection program that we have for a non-owner occupied, we've talked about this briefly. I asked Village Planner Steve Casson to prepare that and possibly send it to the Planning Commission. But if we had an ordinance on the books that required non-owner occupied properties to have an annual or a every 2-year inspection, that might help alleviate some of those situations as well. Because I'm pretty confident that every resident in the village cares about their house, right? They want it to be, the best looking house on the block, and I think we do an excellent job at that. But there are some property owners that aren't necessarily present in the village, and so we need to figure out a way to keep sort of better tabs on that. So we can work towards bringing that forward again maybe next year, and looking at adopting that sort of plan.
Mm-hmm.
Has the Romeo Community Schools been in touch with you? And what is the HDC's thought process about tearing down the middle school?
So just to clarify, that Mr. Robinson is going to their meeting
This coming Thursday.
On Thursday,
Okay.
to give that same
Right.
presentation. But they have asked that question of myself and Mr. Clark, like, hey, do we have any authority to, do that? And I say, unfortunately, the school district is in total control over their assets. It's not village controlled by our rules and regulations, because it's a state. It's considered a state agency, so.
Yeah, we have no power
Yes.
over it whatsoever.
Unfortunately.
And his visit this Thursday will be the second time he's tried to come. He was going to come about 6 weeks ago, and he couldn't for some reason, so it was.
So are you looking for the board to, agree to an ordinance that strengthens the demolition by neglect clause? What's?
I believe he's asked for us to consider the ordinance that you have in front of you in your packet with its
Okay.
changes. Yep.
So make sure it was clear.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And I do have a few concerns, again, about that property inclusion if it sells. How would we word that? And so it's my recommendation that we, take a closer look at this, and I work with Mark to just tidy it up with those few of those points, and then bring it back to Village Council in November for a further vote.
Do we currently have something on the books for rentals that we're not enforcing, or we don't have anything on the books?
We don't have an inspection, all right, so we have adopted, the building maintenance codes that are required of all of our structures, but there isn't anything that specifically, would mandate a visit by one of our building officials.
We have had discussion on that, of trying to add something to this ordinance for that, but we decided not to because we wanted to get one step closer, not take a,
And they might be two separate
3 or 4
things
steps.
anyway.
Well, I
This
think it-
ordinance, and the other would just be for the rental, non-owner.
Yeah, but a lot of the
homes.
rental properties are historical properties, so it actually could accomplish 3 things. There could be a revenue stream from the inspections, an improvement of the property itself, and increased safety for the people that are renting them. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that could happen with something like that that's beneficial in a lot of ways.
But it would be 2 ordinances.
It would
I
be
think.
something different, I realize, but it could be paired up with the demolition by neglect, right?
Have you seen that building code, because rental inspection ordinance, that draft? Because I thought I had asked Cindy when we first looked at that, the one that Steve Casson And I said, let's engage the HDC to see if you had any input on it and how you felt, any of your bylaws or regulations, could be implemented better to offer those protections so that we don't come to this demo by neglect anymore.
I don't recall seeing that
Okay.
at all.
Then I'll get that to Cindy,
Okay.
and I'll have her make sure that she gets that on your agenda. At least you can review it and then offer some input and some feedback.
Right.
And then we'll revisit and try and get that back on our to-do list.
That sounds good.
Okay,
So-
fair enough.
As far as the rewording and the addition of the party selling, do you want me to work with Mr. Clark? Or how would you like the process to work on that?
Well, Mark and I had already sort of discussed at length. Mark, did you want to elaborate on what the misdemeanor and the court costs?
Sure.
As far as that, the fines?
Sure. Let me just mention a couple of things in no particular order of importance. If you're going to consider this, one of the things philosophically, I guess, you need to consider is who do you want to be the enforcing group or entity? Generally, it's the village. That's not going to change. But you currently have a dangerous buildings ordinance that doesn't use the words demolition by neglect. But if you look at the dangerous buildings ordinance, there are provisions in there about things that if these occur, then you're going to get a letter, you're going to get a notice, ultimately you can contest it. There's a procedure in place that's very similar to what's being proposed by the HDC. And so one of the things I encourage you to do is not only look at this, but look at your dangerous buildings ordinance and ask yourselves, how do we want to enforce these things? We know that we don't want buildings to deteriorate. We know that we don't want them to collapse by neglect. We know that we don't want them to come to the HDC requesting a demolition permit because the owner has not done anything to maintain the structure for 5 years or 10 years. That by the time they get to the HDC, it's almost a foregone conclusion. So I think you have that basic underpinning that that's not where you want to end up. So one of the questions is who or how do you want to enforce that? And so I encourage you to look at your dangerous buildings ordinance and this and ask yourselves, how do we want to implement this? And then in connection with that, with respect to the penalties, currently, if you violate the historic district ordinance, if a structure is demolished without the HDC's permission, among the penalties is no building permits for 5 years. Certainly that could affect the value of a property. And so one of the things you want to keep in mind is, for instance, I think in the proposed revisions, there's in section 18-33, one of them is shall not be allowed to make any improvements pertaining to any parcel. Well, I think everybody would agree, okay, you tear down your garage without permission or you tear down the house without permission, you shouldn't be able to rebuild it. But what if you're in the house, you've torn down the garage, the house is there, and your hot water heater goes out? Should you not get a plumbing permit to replace your hot water? If you can't, then now you're kind of contributing to the demolition by neglect. So there's a balance there. I've just asked you, encourage you to look at the various particularities, and there's always the parade of horribles. Every time you have an example, there's one that's always worse. So I realize that can be an endless path, and I'm not encouraging you to do that. Right now, the misdemeanor, maximum penalty, 90 days in jail, $500 fine, and the prohibition on any new building permits. Misdemeanors, it's an unusual thing because you're capped on the misdemeanor by state law. You cannot, without the state legislature's permission, you cannot provide a greater penalty than what the legislature has provided. So you have the misdemeanor. Some people say, well, it's a $500 fine. It's kind of like the cost of doing business. But if you can't build for 5 years, it becomes more than the cost of doing business. And many people now, so many professions or businesses are licensed They don't want a misdemeanor on their record because it could inhibit their ability for educational improvement or for job opportunities. And the burden of proof in a misdemeanor is beyond a reasonable doubt. The village has to prove, if it prosecutes someone, they have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the ordinance was violated. A civil infraction, as Mr. Porter mentioned, the fines can be larger. Civil infraction, the burden of proof is by a preponderance of the evidence, not beyond a reasonable doubt. You're not entitled to a trial by jury. So there are benefits, but there are detriments. So again, there's a balancing act. Do we want the misdemeanor penalties, while financially maybe they're not as great, but in terms of the impact on somebody's life, it might be greater. So it might discourage somebody from violating the ordinance. And again, there aren't hard and fast answers to these things, but they're considerations I would encourage you about which to think. The penalty, you can, as has been discussed, you could limit the prohibition on a building permit to the particular owner, that if it's sold in an arm's length transaction, they're not selling it to their cousin or their future brother-in-law, it's being sold to a stranger. The question becomes, does the prohibition on a new permit, does it run with the land, which means whoever owns it, they're stuck with it for the 5 years, or is it personal to the property owner at the time the ordinance is violated? In which case, all right, I tear down a garage or tear down my house, and then I decide, well, I'm going to move to Bimini and lie on the beach, and so I want to sell my property, put a for sale sign on it, somebody buys it. Should they be saddled with the 5-year prohibition? There are ways to deal with whether it runs with the land or whether it's personal. Obviously, you don't want straw man sales where somebody's just doing it to avoid the ordinance, but I think nothing can be done 100% with certainty, but I think it could be, the language could be drafted such that it would become extremely unlikely that you would fall prey to these straw man sales where somebody's just trying to avoid the ordinance. So I think all these things are manageable. You just have to decide the strength, the penalty, what you want to do. Do you want it in the HDC ordinance? Do you want it in the dangerous building ordinance? These are things that are all manageable. You just have to decide how you want it to play out.
And given what Mark is saying, do you think you need to go back to the HDC and revisit this? Or did you guys take all those factors into account and you're comfortable, because this document came from you, right, to us for consideration and adoption, so.
What we did not consider was a person selling it, but I have had a conversation with another member, and my personal feeling is it's the person, not the property. And if a person sells their property because they cannot rebuild on their property for 5 years and they sell it, my feeling is they want to just get out of the village. They don't want to come back, and because they're probably mad that they can't build anyway, so they're just going to leave, and they're not going to come back and try to buy the house back or try to sell it to someone that they know and do that. So I wouldn't want to saddle the property for this new owner that they would come in and not be able to build a garage or a barn or whatever it is that got torn down. So, I mean, but I have not talked to the rest of the members. And I can do that this Thursday to get their feeling and give you some feedback on that.
Yeah, if you could ask them those questions, and then if certainly you want to see a draft of any other, the language that Mark is referring to that would sort of, whatever lengths prevent a straw man sale like he indicated, we can certainly draft that and then and probably get it back to you. When would be not your meeting this week, when would your next meeting meet?
We meet on the 2nd and 4th Thursdays.
Okay, so you would still have another meeting at the end of the beginning of November?
Correct.
Right, so we could draft that, we could get it to you, and then we would still have time to get it on our November meeting a
Yeah,
few
November
weeks later,
meeting,
and
yes.
then we could all review the final language and hopefully get it adopted then and published and on the books then before the beginning of the year.
And that works.
Okay.
That works. And as far as the rental property, that second one, we're just going to table that. As far as we're concerned, we'll table that and work on that later.
I'm still good, I'll have Cindy get that on the agenda, whether, it won't be on Thursday's agenda probably because your packets have already gone out, but I'll get her a copy of that. I know she already has one somewhere, but I'll make sure she's got the latest update, and then we'll get it on your agenda for the first week of November as well. Just for, start a cursory glance and offer some feedback. I'll also try and get her to give you a copy of the dangerous building ordinance. Again, if you're just going to compare how they fit, she can probably get you those before Thursday, and everybody can take them home and have some light reading for bedtime if
Yeah,
they want.
right. In case we have a tough time going to sleep.
Just the thought I had, there could be a situation where somebody wants to sell the place, and the person that's buying it doesn't want that building, so he tears it down and then sells it, and so that would be the one thing they might want to consider.
Or I sell my house to Matt here, because I want it torn down, but Matt tears it down and then sells it back to me. There's so many loopholes, but like you said, Mark, there's just, you could keep going with that, yeah.
Right, and
Right.
you should be able to draft against the most egregious or most obvious. We're probably, and I don't mean this facetiously, we're only limited by our imaginations, and the more we want to do, the more imaginative we become. And so I think depending on, like, throwing a pebble in the lake, how far out do the ripples go? I think the early on ones or the closer in ones you can draft against. The exotic ones, well, maybe not. Again, if you want your ordinance to be a foot thick, yes. If you want it to be manageable, understandable, and enforceable, then the plainer, the simpler, the more direct it is, the more likely. Because what you really want is compliance. You don't really want to penalize people.
Right.
You want them to comply.
Very
And
true.
so the clearer it is, and realistically, the more the more readily somebody's able to comply. And again, I'm not saying you should soften your ordinances such that nobody has to do anything and then you have compliance across the board. That's not my point. My point is the clearer, the more specific, the more manageable it is, the greater your likelihood of compliance. Because that's what you want. You don't want to penalize people. You don't want to write them nasty letters and issue them tickets. You want people to look and see, well, this is what the ordinances provide, this is what I'm going to do, this is how I have to conduct myself. But if I don't, this is what's going to happen to me.
The challenge is staying ahead of the loopholes.
Yes,
That's the
always,
challenge, right?
always.
Yeah, hindsight's really great, but
Yep.
foresight sometimes fails. Okay, anything else, Rod?
No, I'm good.
I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
We'll get those, and then we'll just work together, and we'll get it on our agendas.
Yep.
All right,
Thank you very much.
Have a good night. Okay, we can move on to item B of new business. We have the OMA Bill 1108. I don't know if anybody's followed the Supreme Court ruling, struck down all of the governor's executive orders. And then when there was some controversy of, well, when is that effective? Is it 21 days from now? Is it 28 from days now? Did it go retroactive back until, April 30th? And then there was some talk of it being, even before that in March. And so this is all uncharted territory. I knew that there was the Senate Bill 1108 that was passed. It was still unsigned by our governor midweek. So we had to make the determination for this meeting that we are not going to have a remote meeting because they were not allowed. We didn't have an executive order that allowed for an OMA virtual meeting. So we said we're going to do an in-person meeting. We still, however, have the guidelines from the CDC that says you can only have in this room a certain amount of people based on the square footage, which happens to be 20. I checked with Clara. So technically, we are outside of the CDC guidelines, having this many people, as well as these board members, all present in one room. So the governor has since signed the bill. So we can meet virtually up until the end of this year, December 31st. first, for whatever reason. Moving forward into 2021, you can meet remotely if you have an active military or if there's a medical concern. We certainly have medical concerns because we have the public safety and welfare of having more people allowed than what the CDC guidelines. So we can still technically meet next year under that parameter as long as the CDC is having these rules for separation and social distancing and masking in place. In advance of the governor actually signing the bill, it was recommended that we pass a resolution, which you have in your packet, the resolution ratifying all of the decisions that this body has made through our virtual meetings dating back until March of this year. That way, if anybody was concerned that we didn't have the authority to take the actions that we did have prior to that, we would certainly be covered under this resolution. So that's what you have in the packet. Now, the bill that was passed, 1108, and signed into law by the governor did make Open Meetings Act allowable retroactive until March. So technically, we're covered, but it's legal advice's recommendation that we still adopt and pass the resolution that you have in your packet, just to make sure that some other body doesn't say, well, she didn't have the authority to sign Bill 1108, or challenge it in another court of law, and then there's another set of rules that we are applying. With that said, we need to take a look and a consideration for how are we going to meet moving forward under this pandemic. A lot of municipalities are struggling with this. Everybody is that I know of, right? Do we meet remotely? Do we have some sort of hybrid meeting? Do we have in-person meetings that, because we have a great room that, you know, can accommodate a large crowd that may come to us, excuse me. So we need to take a look at how we want to meet. It's very difficult under the Zoom meetings for myself to run the meeting and to be able to monitor the chat feeds, to monitor Facebook Live stream, to make sure that the public has the opportunity to hear and be heard. And I understand that's, you know, that's what we want. We want the public to be able to engage us. So we've made every effort to do that under these circumstances and our virtual meetings. We can look at a hybrid meeting option, which would mean the board still needs to meet in person. Part of this rule, there's a lot of rules built into this bill that says, you know, you can't just meet virtually because, you know, you wanted to go to vacation on Florida and so you're just going to log in and attend the meeting next Monday because while you're in Florida. No. Now, if you're going to meet virtually, you have to declare where you're at. You don't have to state your address, but you do have to say, hey, I'm in Romeo, Michigan, and I'm on this remote Zoom meeting. So we still need a quorum of the board. We can meet hybrid in person and conduct our business. We still need to provide an opportunity for the public to hear and be heard. So my initial thought was we could have a two-room situation, which I talked to Clara about, and she offered to either one, our board would meet upstairs at the Village Hall. We don't have anybody with a mobility issue right now, so even though that room is not ADA, we certainly could meet as a board with essential personnel in that space that would be limited by capacity, and I think would be okay with the people that we have here, these numbers. We could then allow the public to be here, and we would have to virtually live stream our meeting into this facility. We would have to have technology that would allow that stream to be reversed when it came time for public comment, so that they in turn then could step up to a podium and we could hear them from our location and thus return it back. That requires, obviously, technology, IT. We have no IT department, right? We don't have any technology that allows for video conferencing, although it's out there. So we could look at purchasing that. It would also require, you know, a crew to do that. You would have to have somebody in this facility monitoring public safety, monitoring that the live feed was working, monitoring the microphone so that we can make sure that that's all working, because obviously if we're remote, I don't have the ability to twinkle my nose and zap over here. So I think that would on average cost about $1,250 a meeting, just from the initial phone calls. I haven't got a formal bid, but again, it's a large expenditure. It's just an option, so I'm throwing that out there. If anybody has any other ideas, we certainly can't limit people coming in.
Could we, I know we don't have to have our meeting in the village. Could we look at options with the school buildings?
Right now, the school is not allowing any meetings to happen in their facilities. The auditoriums are still remaining closed, so that's not an option. Again, something that I looked at. I considered moving it to Bruce Township. They've got a bigger meeting room. They can socially distance better. But again, they're not utilizing that space and letting anybody else come in. Their building is actually still closed to public walk-ins in anticipation of the election, making sure that they're keeping their staff safe and healthy so that everybody is there to actually work the polls on November 3rd.
Did you check with the Mason Hall at all? That's like the next biggest building I can think of in the village.
I did not. We reached out to the Lions Club to see if they would be able to host a meeting. There wasn't, it wasn't a hard no, but it really wasn't an option. Again, it's not heated well, so.
True.
Well, the problem is if you go remotely from one of our facilities now, they have to pay to clean it, they have to do a lot to prepare it for the next group that's coming in, so it's pretty hard to go in a private or non-village-owned facility.
We considered here, having us meet in here, allowing 20 people total in this room, and Clara agreed that she could probably double book us a room on this campus, and she could reserve the silver room over there. We could live stream it over there, so there'd still have to be a monitor that we would have to purchase and install over there so that people could actually watch it on some sort of TV device. We could open it up for a public forum, and the participants would have to come to this room. They would physically have to walk from that room over here for public comment. So we could build in some sort of, time frame, giving them 5 or 10 minutes to make that trip over here. It's an option. There's still going to have to be somebody over there in that room to make sure that the live feed is up and running and not cutting out. It wouldn't require as much technology upgrade. We wouldn't need to get like a video conferencing device to do that from Verizon. Or we can just do the best that we can and meet here and try and, ask everybody to social distance with masks.
When we do
Right. It is outside of the CDC guidelines. It's, right. So it's outside of the guidelines.
because it's more than
20 people, which is the maximum capacity that this room is allowed to hold.
We have like.
It is not being enforced, which is why everybody's here tonight that wants to attend. It is not my intention to ever tell somebody they can't come into our public meeting, right? There was all sorts of questions and concerns from the residents that we weren't allowing people to come in, or we were going to try and limit it. I'm not trying to sell tickets to this dog and pony show, right? If anybody wants to come in and offer public comment, you're welcome to do that. I just need to make sure that everybody's safe while they do it, right? I need to make sure that each one of us are safe. Not looking to bring the virus back to my family that I might catch, from being in attendance at a public meeting like this, or any of the other office staff. We had some concerns where people had some symptoms. Thank goodness they've tested positive where there was, a possible exposure, but we had to really have a conversation in the village hall. What would happen if one of us got sick, right? We would literally have to shut down, and I don't know who's gonna monitor the, the inboxes for trash pickup. There are 5 people, right? There are 5 people in the office, and I don't know, luckily, everybody's remained healthy throughout this. I need to make sure that stays that way. So, I'm looking for some feedback and some thoughts, some ideas anybody has.
Well, I think from a,
My feedback, we're just continue doing what we're doing, but.
because I think our meeting goes a lot smoother if we're face-to-face.
It's definitely much easier to have a face-to-face meeting,
Well, I think
to have a conversation, and to be able to, look out and engage and get a sense for body language. There aren't all the distractions that happen on a Zoom meeting where, somebody's phone is ringing or the dog is barking or, there's something happening in the background that's on the screen time. So, yes, it is much
Is there any
easier.
more room in here, like we have that storage room, I don't know, 5 people in there?
No, I
and
checked. None of those rooms where the spin bikes are right now, you can't have any people in there. They're too small to even have one person in there from what we're being told. You know, you could put one person in there, which is why I asked Josh to go back there, right? You could open up the doors, but that's not heated back there, so in theory, you know, you could
But that
maybe
gives
put
you
one
probably
or
another
two,
5 people, or-
but would they really be able to see? I don't know. It's full of sawdust and staging, so it's, you know, it's just not ideal at all. But again, this is unprecedented, and I don't have a solution. I'm just trying to find one that allows us to still conduct our business and engage the people, our residents, and that's the most important part. So we probably will not be able to have, you know, the town hall meetings where we're, you know, inviting all of the boards yet. I just don't see us having a space that we could do that. Even if we rented a tent outside and got heaters, the tent still isn't gonna be big enough with, you know, with a microphone system that really everybody would be able to
The
hear.
costs are gonna go up. So-
Right,
What about total
you're
soccer?
renting more equipment, so
The total soccer complex, did we reach out to them?
I did not reach out to them.
Which one?
The
Masonic?
the soccer,
Right.
the total soccer complex.
Oh. Or Masonic, with the Masonic hall upstairs, except that's not ADA.
Right, it's not ADA, right. Downstairs is separated into 2 rooms, so that's not,
No, it doesn't help it.
it's not any bigger
upstairs.
than this room is,
Yeah.
that we have right here.
I agree with Matt, I'm comfortable here, at least as a board member. That, you're talking over $12,000.
I
Should
know.
it happen for the whole year? Should it, that, you know, that's a lot of money. I don't know, did any of the public get?
Well, it's just $12,000 for us, but we still have to take into consideration the planning commission meeting, the DDA meetings. HDC is not, I mean, it's open to the public, but they typically don't live stream or have the Mitt TV there recording their minutes, or their meetings. So there's at least 3 meetings per month that would be in this room. There is some concern, you know, with our planning commission chairman, who's, you know, an at-risk and has some health concerns, and is very leery to actually, you know, host it in person. I think all of us are concerned, but relatively, you know, healthy and, but I can't say the same for everybody. So again, we have to have the option.
What have they been doing?
They have been meeting remotely, just like we have over the last couple of months.
Well, I guess
And they didn't
my
have,
thing would be, is that's what they want to continue doing. Let them continue to do it.
they cannot do that under the Open Meetings Act, is what I'm suggesting. Under the Senate bill,
They-
right.
They can till the end of the
To the
year.
end of the year,
To the
yes,
end of the
excuse
year.
me.
Right.
Yes.
For 2 more months, they can do it, and after that, we have to have a solution.
Yes.
Well, based on what other corporations are doing, they're setting the stage into June, July, and August for what they're gonna do. So, you know,
Yes.
we can't assume at the end of the year we're gonna be good to go, so.
No, I don't think we will.
So, I mean, we gotta look into June, we gotta look into August, right? I mean, so, we gotta make a
Now,
decision.
Make a decision for next month.
And you can revert.
Yes, right?
Can you revert if you decide, if everything gets relaxed? Obviously, we can go back to business as usual, but
Well, what we need to do is have a clear rules and procedures. I mentioned that at the beginning of the meeting with Megan. How are we going to do this? We need a procedure so that everybody understands what we're looking at, that we're not going to turn people away from public participation. We're going to give them these options, right? What are those options? Let's spell that out, right? Is that, you know, just we'll social distance the best that we can? Are we doing it hybrid? I mean, this board needs to give me the authority to say, you know, we're gonna meet through this hybrid, or we're not gonna meet, you know, we're only doing in person. I mean, I have a strong, you know, opinion that we need to make sure that everybody is staying healthy and safe. I get it, kids are in school. I think that, you know,
so you're saying,
but the experts, the data, you know, we have limited exposures here in the village, but I don't want a spike to happen.
so you're saying if we chose to meet this way, if 42 people come through the door, we have to let 42 people in?
I don't see how we can
Stop.
tell people that they cannot come. I don't believe, Mark, do you know a part of that?
Well,
We don't have the ability to limit.
Well, I think you do, but the difficulty is you've got a number of moving parts, most of which you've touched on. One is the most current statute in terms of allowing completely remote meetings. For whatever reason, the legislature chose to have it expire at the end of the year. And it was a scramble to get this far along. I suspect because municipalities, you're not the Lone Ranger, other people are struggling with this too. There could be a mad scramble toward the end of December to extend this statute or some variation of it into the new year, because the January 1st of 2021, the only reason for remote participation, and it's not council-wide, it's either if you're in the military or if the individual has a health concern, and you have to, I guess, within reason, state what that is, and as Mrs. Malzahn said, you have to disclose where you are. You know, I'm in my attic at my house on West St. Clair. So that, as of January the 1st, is going to present a real challenge, because now it's not a general ability to meet remotely, it's particularized to either military service or the health concern of one of you or more of the council members. And you're still trying to fold into that. Another point that Ms. Malzahn made, you're trying to fold into it the spacing requirements. When the governor's stay-at-home orders, for lack of a better term, were essentially voided by the Michigan Supreme Court after April 30th, the director of the Michigan Department of Public Health, after that Supreme Court opinion came out at the beginning of October, issued almost identical orders to what the governor had pronounced. And those orders include those spacing requirements. And there's a most recent version of it. You can go on the state website and look at those. But if it's a public meeting, if it's more than 10, it's got to be so many people per, I think it's 1 per 2,000 square feet, or maximum 20. The rules that the director of the Department of Public Health enunciated are almost identical to the governor's. So what are you going to do? I know you didn't ask a question and want to have an answer with another question, but what are you going to do on January 1st if nothing is done? You can only meet remotely if one of you is, and only that person is ill or in the military, and if, assuming you're all healthy and nobody's in the military, you have to meet here, but you're going to have to do something to accommodate the public, because if you don't have a big enough space, you have to have the two-way communication, because there's going to be this tension between what the law permits and what the health department has decreed, and which is why I think the legislature may, toward the end of the year, scramble to do something, but who knows? You don't. So you're going to have to contemplate, I believe, all right, what do we do? You have to be here in this room. I don't. I can stand out in the hall. I'm not a voting member. I'm not a member of the council. I can stand out in the hall and you can yell, hey, come in, we've got a question. So you can accommodate people, but you're going to have to allow for the logistics of that. What do these people do? You don't want to turn people away, but on the other hand, you don't want to month in and month out violate the pronouncements or the edicts of the state health department. So you're going to have to somehow strike a balance there, and right now, there's no clear way to do that. There's no hard and fast way to do that. I do think you're going to have to consider some of what's been suggested. You meet in one room, people have to have the ability to communicate both ways. They have to hear you, see you, and they have to have the ability to be seen and heard by you. And how you do that, I'm a technological Neanderthal. I'm no help there. But there has to be a way, I think, that could be addressed in whole or in part. But that's with what you're going to have to wrestle.
I think the best suggestion is the same campus here and then in the other building, so that we're close, and if they
Right.
wanted to come in and
So,
speak.
so realistically, you know, the live stream could be on a monitor over there. If we don't purchase a teleconferencing piece of equipment that would allow them to, you know, pick up the phone and call this room.
They could call on your
they
own
would
cell
have to-
phone.
They would have to come over here to make public comment and then be on camera. And that, for certain, that we could limit the room capacity to that 20 people.
We could have a village cell phone with a number put out there, and they could call the cell phone and put it up to a speaker.
I think they have to be
Need to be
seen.
seen.
They have to be able to be seen and heard.
FaceTime.
And both ways, 2 ways. And that's only as you're struggling with that right now.
Yeah.
Who knows what's going to happen next week, next month, by the end of the year? You don't know if the Department of Public Health is going to issue relaxed guidelines, tighten them. You don't know if the legislature is going to change the law. I believe, but I'm not a handicapper, but I believe that the legislature is going to have to extend beyond January 1st general remote meetings, maybe with some stricter requirements, but I think they're going to have to do something because the circumstances are going to require it. But what they're going to do, I have no idea.
So right now, through the end of the year, the planning commission could meet on Zoom, like they have been, right? We've all pretty much decided that it's much easier to meet in person. I'm sure they would find it much easier to meet in person, but if there are health, concerns of one or more of the members, then they certainly have the ability to meet remotely through Zoom. I don't know if the DDA is as big of a concern, because again, we do get some public, but not as many as would come to our village council meeting, but we still have to have that same consideration because that's a bigger board.
And we do have
So-
some older,
Yes.
possibly compromised people.
By the time you get a 9-member
Yeah.
board and you get Josh doing the camera and you get Lisa Hall taking the minutes, it's a concern. So,
So could we make a motion to go forward with what we're doing for the next 2 months, and can we get a bid on what it would take to set up the building next door to do what we need to do? I mean, to me, it's not going to be cost prohibitive, because it's probably not going to be that ridiculously as expensive, because the technology is a lot cheaper, and we're looking for 2 sites, right? We're not looking for around the world. We're looking for this building and that building to be connected. So.
Before we
well,
do
that's
that-
assuming that Clara can accommodate 2 rooms.
If she can't, then-
Right, on this campus. And she said, they had to move some dance classes because they were going to reserve that room for tonight. But I said, look, I don't have a TV that I can put over there, even to live stream it if I wanted to. So thank you, but let's talk about this tonight and then move forward. So yes, I can have that conversation. Lynn Walker is actually the one that does the room reservations to see, could we schedule out based on the planning commission's meeting schedule and our regularly monthly meeting schedules, 2 rooms.
Yeah.
That would allow for that. And then there would still need to be a technology purchase of whatever, TVs or equipment. I believe we would probably have to upgrade the Wi-Fi signal in this building. It's lacking, from what I'm understanding, to keep it stable. I think that's why it drops out occasionally on the live stream feed. That's what I'm being told. So we may need to look at that. I don't know what Xfinity would charge to come and put a booster here, but again, I can ask Claire to
could
make that call and get a quote.
We could use a projector.
So-
We could also project. Instead of getting a television, we could use a projector, can we?
Yeah, but it has,
Through the
as long as
computer.
it has the ability, whatever the receiver is,
Yeah.
whether it's a Roku stick,
Yeah.
or, yeah. All right, but we'll do that. I will, although I am curious, anybody in the audience has some feedback on, public comment. How would you feel if you were not in this room right now? At this point, I'm saying it's time for public comment, and you have to walk over here from the senior room. Does anybody have some thoughts or some feedback on that? I mean, it's not ideal, but unless we want,
Get over here.
I'm sorry?
Just to make sure that there was an actual announcement and some time given, because some people, we like to be quick to get on because it's getting late. Just to make sure that everybody's comments are heard, because, everybody likes to be in. The next thing you know, you've moved on and we're frustrated because we really wanted to, speak our mind.
Well, I do not think that, so when it comes time for public comment, it doesn't have to be one person coming over and then walking back and going, tag, you're it, now they walk over. I mean, I think everybody can sort of file over and, and social distance out and form a line and come into the room.
I do have one more comment. As far as your IT crew, can you talk to the high schoolers? Because God knows they know a ton of that stuff. And they could use it for community hours or,
Good point.
Good idea.
Just knowledge of it.
That's a good point.
And that's free.
Which I can do, but just understand, free is, right, the value is what you pay, right? So everybody would have to understand that this is free, and these are high school kids, so.
Still gotta buy the hard.
Right.
Yeah, but I'm not
Exactly,
talking just
right.
any Joe Blow kid, but someone that's in
Yes.
technology
Right.
class.
I get it. Yep.
course, Right?
Yep.
I mean, they've got a whole department for that.
Yeah, they put together things for the high school that are broadcast at sporting events and,
Right.
on the facility. That's
We can certainly, right, we can certainly engage them to see if they would be able to assist with that.
Well,
Right.
even if they assist us with what we need to do and we go purchase what we need to execute it, I mean, that would be a great
Yeah.
step ahead, right? Here's what you guys need, here's how to do it, and here's what you need to, here's what it's gonna cost you.
I'd be willing to donate a projector. I have one at home that I don't use, that the village could have, to project it onto a wall. So at least it has, all you gotta do is hook it into the feed of a computer, which I know a couple of the board members have a laptop that they can just plug it in and run the feed. But I would gladly donate it.
Okay, so we will take a look at that. All right, so then I'll put together sort of a proposal of what those costs would be, and then we can take a
So-
look at. For all I know, Clara may want, to also be part of that asset management or asset purchase, because they're having, other HOA meetings and stuff in this room, so they may need to use the same setup. So maybe that's a partner purchase. I don't know, but I'll reach out and I'll bring a proposal back to our November meeting, and we'll plan at this point. Well, I guess I'll.
So are we looking for a motion to approve this resolution, or do you think we're fine?
Yes, back to the
Okay.
resolution, yes.
So
we
I
need
will make a motion to approve this resolution as stated, to make our, everything
Do you
legit.
want to read the resolution so that the public will know it and then save my voice?
The resolution of the Romeo Village Council affirming actions taken and resolutions made during remote meetings held pursuant to the governor's executive orders.
Support?
Okay, so we have a motion by Poznanski, we have support by Bartholomew. Any other discussion on the resolution? I think you have to take a roll call on that, please.
Poznanski,
Yes.
Bartholomew,
Yes.
Edwards,
Yes.
Seidel,
Yes.
Hart,
Yes.
President Milzon.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Mark, does that have to be published?
It does not.
Okay.
It just, as long as it's noted in your minutes, the adoption of the resolution will be sufficient.
Okay, perfect. Last item under new business is our budget amendments. We are lucky enough to have our accountant, Tim Sadowski here, and Clerk Trapp available to answer any other questions. Did you want to turn the floor over to Tim, Catherine, or did you have any comments you wanted to start?
No comments. I just wanted to, well, as I spoke with Tim earlier, that a lot of this came from our audit. Like I said, we're still the tail end of our audit, so he would be better versed in answering those questions because he works closely, accountants work closely with our auditors. Tim?
Thank you, Tim. You have the floor.
So the village has a corrective action plan. Every quarter, we have to do a budget amendment. We do that so the village stays on top of where it is financially. And then come year end, all the departments are within budget, and then we don't get another follow-up corrective action plan. So here's your quarterly budget amendment through September 30th. I highlighted the major changes. The first one is tax revenue. Our tax warrant has been settled and accepted by the county, so those numbers are actual. The numbers that have gone delinquent are also recorded on your budget to actual now as delinquent, which is personal property tax we do not get reimbursed for until it's collected by the county as delinquent. So that's all accounted for. We did receive CARES Act money. We had to spend that for COVID-related expenses in the current fiscal year. That was 150% of the regular revenue sharing. That has been recorded also as a federal grant. So the village did take that money and is not going to send it back. There was a slight increase for capital outlay for lobby improvements. There was a slight adjustment for site plan revenues and expenditures to the building fund. They were put into the general fund, but it just made it a lot easier to reallocate those to the building department. The 457B employer expense came up during the audit. It was not being tracked through the software properly, so that was reprogrammed, and so that has been budgeted. Not a very big expense, but like I said, due to the transition in software, it came up. Also, an audit finding was they wanted to get rid of the 800 fund OPEB trust and move that to the general fund, so that has been reclassified. Again, that's not a financial impact, however, it is closing a fund and moving it completely to the general fund. More clarification and just breaking out reclassifying expenses for vacation and sick. Again, those were just under full-time wages. They've now been broken out, so you can clearly see those in all the departments. Equipment rental, we were using an estimate. The auditors rejected that. They made us go to the Schedule C, which is hourly usage for equipment rental is charged to each department as actuals throughout the year. So that has been readjusted, and the current amendment uses last year's actual numbers, and then it will get adjusted through your quarterly budget amendments to whatever usage is done by each vehicle. And the last one is retiree healthcare. Again, was an estimate that was changed, again rejected by our auditors, and was we had to come up with a method to track retiree healthcare. The easiest way to do that is active wages. You take your current active employees, use the percentage breakdown, and apply that to your retiree health care. Again, that was done last year, and the actual this year is used as the basis until we actually see how the employees work out, and then you'll have your final budget amendment at year end. So like I said, it's nothing really major financially impacting. It's just your cleanup for the first quarter.
Does anybody have any questions regarding those budget amendments?
Do we still have that OPEB money separated somehow, though?
No.
I mean, I think I felt comfortable having it its own
Being able to see it over.
fund, and so we couldn't touch it, nobody messed with it. Now if it's stuck in the general fund, all of a sudden, things have a way of...
Correct. So it does have its own
Kidding.
line item, but is under Village Hall and Grounds now. And it is mixed in with the general fund. Before, it was just a transfer out.
Right.
And it had its own fund, and they said, no, that's not accounting, which they're technically correct, it is not. Because to be a special fund, it has to have its own revenue source. So it's not its own revenue source. What you're doing is you're taking money out of the general fund and transferring it to another fund. That's not its own revenue source. So they put an X on that and said you had to move it back to the general fund. So I said, okay, you're the auditors. So I moved it back to the general fund. So no, it can't be broken out, I guess.
But we can initiate, a transfer. So once the budget is adopted for the fiscal year, that money can be transferred into the investment account, right away. So technically, it's not just sitting in the general fund.
Okay.
It should be invested right away so that it's earning maximum,
Bang for it, buck.
right.
That's what we did this year. We have a corrective action plan. So if you fail to invest the money that was going towards the bonds and not send it to MERS, then you default on your corrective action plan, and you get another letter from Treasury saying you failed to follow your corrective action plan. So the village has to make the contribution every year or be in default. But like I said, it's just not, it's in a separate fund. It's not allowed to be in a separate fund anymore.
Okay.
As a quick update, I think, what was the percentage that we calculated that we were earning on those investments? I'm sorry to put you on the spot.
It
but
tanked, though. It was under 5. It was right around 5%, but now it's dropped off. You actually had negative interest rates for
Yeah.
some quarters, but it has been picked up, seeing the economy picked up. But we had, I believe, 2 quarters of negative interest rates. But it has since recuperated with positive, taking off the losses.
So hopefully it will come back. Absolutely.
All cities, most cities invest in MERS or ICMA, so either way you took the loss. MERS is more based on stocks and property. They invest in property and highly in stocks, and ICMA diversifies a lot more. But MERS targets the 8% investment return, so they are higher risk. So we took a larger investment loss, but you also make it up faster. So it's just, it's no different than yourself. You can do high risk and you make more, you can lose it faster. It's just the plan type you decide to invest in.
Any other discussion or questions regarding the budget amendments? If not, can we have a motion to approve the budget amendments as presented?
Thanks, Tim.
Motion to
I'll make a
approve.
motion. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, motion by Poznanski, I think I heard you first. Support by Saito. Roll call, please.
Poznanski,
Yes.
Seidel,
Yes.
Bartholomew,
Yes.
Hart,
Yes.
Edwards,
Yes.
President Milzon.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
As a quick side note, I did get the first invoice from our audit, and it was down $7,000 from last year. So we've had a pretty smooth and seamless audit process, thanks to Catherine and Tim. And they finished it, and they were there 3 days, correct? 3 days? 1 day? 1 day. They had a couple of follow-up questions, so I just reached out to Paul Bailey to find out when he would be available to come and present the audit findings for everybody. So that's good news, a little bit of
They
savings
used to
there.
come in and stay for a week or so.
I think last year it was like 3 months, to be perfectly honest with you. We were having, yeah. And there's another good option that Dennis Doley from Ascend has given to us for our retiree healthcare. And he is presenting that. Mark is currently drafting a letter to the union representatives for the proposal of switch the primary insurance, program. Instead of Blue Cross, it was to Priority Health. But there's another arm where he can bring a cost savings to the village and put the retirees back on Blue Cross and Blue Shield instead of on their own plan. So he's going to look to bring that to us in November. Looks like it might be another $50,000 or $60,000 in savings. So it's good that he's on top of these product changes, and hopefully we'll get some approval from the unions and we can make the switch to Priority Health, which was a significant savings, 66, I think, or 70,000 plus with the retiree health changes. So that would be a huge savings on our health care. I'll let you know how that all pans out. Okay, we're up to number 12, public comments. Anybody in the audience want to make a public comment? Please just step to the podium and give me your name and address.
My name is Teresa Kraft. My address is 295 Dickinson Street. And I came today because I received this letter from the village. It's addressed to me. Doesn't have the proper address. It has 295 Dorsey Street, which does not exist. There's a 259, but not 295.
Okay. Clearly the mailman knows you and he was able to just get it to you by name, right? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then in there was the sidewalk paper, if you all haven't seen one of these yet. So basically, again, has the wrong address, street.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm sorry, out of curiosity, does the address on the form match the address on the envelope?
Yes.
It just has the wrong name on it.
It has Dorsey Street. I live on Dickinson Street.
Okay.
Both of them say Dorsey.
Okay. So it's either the wrong name or it's the wrong address.
Right.
Okay, so one of the two. I was just trying to figure out where the discrepancy could be. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so anyways, I received this to get some sidewalk repair. Okay. And not really understanding this, because it says 4 slabs. So I went to my sidewalk and looked and got, I guess I'm not understanding where the 4 slabs are.
Well, all the slabs that needed to be repaired are marked. So if it came to
Well-
your name but to the wrong address, that it certainly just needs to get to the right
No, I
name.
have this
Oh,
marked.
so you do have them marked?
Yes.
Okay,
But
okay.
this isn't, I don't know, it's 1 slab.
Christine, I'd be more than happy to go over there tomorrow or whenever
Okay.
it's convenient for her and go over everything with her.
But clearly it says 4 on this.
Yeah,
So,
I'd
am
like
I
to come
doing-
take a look. I could have gotten, it's 259 and 295 we're talking, or?
Right.
Yeah, it could have been when you're writing down tons of these addresses, every once in a while you can get a number backwards. So if I did that, I apologize, but I'd love to come over and go over everything with you.
That would
If
be
I may.
wonderful, because I certainly
Perfect.
don't see 4.
Right, no,
I
they
don't
would be
wanna
clearly
pay for
marked,
4.
right.
No,
I
I
don't
can
even
come
wanna
over and
pay
take a
for
look.
1, to be honest, but.
Okay.
I've done it for a lot of other people, so I don't mind coming over.
Right.
Absolutely.
I guess my other question is that this was dated on the 14th. The permit is for the 15th, and my neighbor said you were at my house on the 16th. So I don't understand how this got mailed to me
Clearly, I
before
can
it
take
ever
a look
got
at
filled
it.
out.
Right, well, I know that the sidewalks were marked prior to the letters being sent out, right?
Not in my
So-
case.
Well, I go out numerous times too, so if someone
Right.
saw me on another day, I may have been just walking by. I mean, I don't know. I'll have to come
Right,
over
well,
and
I'm
take a
just
look.
saying, it
Yes.
clearly made it
There's some
on the
dates.
14th.
Okay.
This one says the 15th,
We'll get it all straightened out.
and so I don't really understand that.
Well, the timestamp on the postage meter, when those envelopes were run, I did date the letter for the next business day in
Right.
advance of the delay in the mail, because there was some concern from other residents who got it, and the postmark, the letter was dated when I actually drafted the letter and was assembling all the envelopes, but then it didn't get to the post office and there was a delay in whatever the postal service is. So I took that into account and built in the date of the letter after I was actually taken to the post office, because it says from the date of the letter, you have 10 days or 20 days. So I tried to anticipate a delay in the postal service. So that's the delay, the discrepancy there between the date of the letter and the date on the postmark. When Nathan was actually at your property, I don't have an answer for that, but.
My neighbors say Friday, the 16th. So I don't really
again,
know.
Yeah, I'll get your information right after the meeting, and then I can come over and go over everything with you.
We're gonna take
Absolutely.
care.
Because I certainly, like I said, I took a picture, and, I mean, there's clearly, this is the only marking, so it wouldn't be 4 slabs, and that's quite a price difference.
Oh, for sure.
Absolutely.
And, I also took the liberty of going around in my neighborhood and looking at some other sidewalks that are in need of repair
Okay.
or not need of repair, that, since you did do the Dickinson area, that have not been marked. Like that one.
Right, we're doing one street at a time. There's a
And-
lot of sidewalks that aren't marked that we're going to be getting to.
Right, but she already said that you guys did Dickinson Street.
Well, as far as the marking,
And
Yeah.
that one, maybe, like, there are ones, we're doing still tripping hazards, right? Because there might be cracked sidewalks, but that should be repaired, but they aren't the immediate ones. It's the tripping hazards.
Right, what I'm saying is that, I mean, we can walk up and down the street.
that's what I want to do.
Okay.
Yeah, and it'd be easier to
Because-
do it then when we're looking at them and.
Well, I guess my other thing is that I've actually had my sidewalk fixed 3 times now. It was new sidewalk when I moved in 1994. And it was new sidewalk when they did the rails to trails. There was a grant to enhance the sidewalks around the trails. and I got another new sidewalk then. And then I got a third new sidewalk when they came with the gas lines.
Oh,
So I don't know how many times mine needs to be fixed,
right.
but
It'll
in 20 years, I mean, I would think 3-4 times would be.
Well, we'd have to.
Yeah, let me
right,
get your information
yeah.
right after the meeting, and then I can come over.
Okay.
For
The
sure.
other thing is too, is it says plus approach.
Which would be the
So-
ADA ramp. So you must have a corner lot there, or
Yes.
what, the property that was being flagged was for the
Yes.
ADA
But I'm
ramp.
saying all the way up Dickinson Street, there are several ones that aren't ADA, that are not flagged.
There
So
are
if you're
the-
gonna be fair
right.
and consistent,
Right. There were several
Is what
that
I'm
also
looking for.
included the approach, but I guess I would have to take a look and defer to you, who, you
Yeah.
know, who walked it, which intersections
not-
those were.
and
We're
for
not-
that
we're only doing
ADA, is there not grant money that we could have applied for, like in the past, when the village had other areas like that?
When those corner slabs are broken or dangerous,
Right.
we replace those and we have to put the ADA mat on. But we're not going to do every corner if it doesn't have a problem.
Right,
You know, we don't have to do that until we replace it. Then we have to put the mat on.
right, but I'm
So-
saying mine's been replaced twice since those actually went in.
Okay. Yeah, like I say, I'll get your information. It'd be a lot easier to discuss it while we're standing there and, you know,
Exactly.
talk about it, so. But thank you for bringing the pictures in.
Okay.
Yes.
Anybody else?
Do you mind if I pull this down and it's bothering me? Is that
Go
okay?
ahead. It'll be easier to hear you if you, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Could you give us your name and address?
My name is Shelley Rosso. I'm a village resident. I'm going to start my timer here so I can go over. I have 3 quick topics to comment on. One of them is I've always learned that there are no dumb questions, and if you have a question, someone else probably does too. So I reached out to Ms. Malzahn with a question, and she promptly responded. So I'm going to read it just so that everybody knows if you had the same question, because I think somebody may have. And it's in regards to the new crosswalks and the grant proposals and all that good stuff going on downtown. I asked what type of maintenance is necessary and what is the anticipated cost of the new crosswalks if we have to maintain them, thinking to the future. The response was, "Thank you for your question. The maintenance required for the enhanced pedestrian crossings would be the same for any street or sidewalk asset in the business district done by the DPW and/or the County Road Commission. Normal usage, wear, and tear would need to be addressed, as well as any residual damaging effects caused by weather, snow, ice, and salt, and possible accident damage. It would be impossible to calculate the cost caused by damage, so those costs would need to be calculated at the time of the occurrence. The anticipated lifespan of the red concrete is 5 to 7 years, so that portion, similar to the white and yellow striping that the village pays for every year as part of our maintenance, would also include the reapplication of that material, which is about $3,000 per crossing. I hope I addressed your questions, and you did. Thank you. But I just thought if anyone else had that kind of question come up for the future, they would want to know. My second quick little comment about the sidewalk repairs separate from the crosswalk that's happening. I would ask that the board consider updating the ordinance to match what the actions are. It's a great thing that the sidewalks are getting done. There's no doubt that we have issues with them. My concern as a resident is several years from now, 1, 2, 3 years from now, we either have a different budget or a different administration, and that cost sharing is not offered to the next group of residents where it may need to be done. So to be fair and equitable to everybody, I'm asking the board to consider updating the ordinance to reflect their actions. If you stand behind this program, and it's a good one, then it would be probably best to update the ordinance to match the actions. shouldn't be that hard, but that's my request as a resident, to consider that for future equity for everybody. And then my third comment is in regards to the last board meeting that occurred remotely, or on Zoom, excuse me. I was a witness to a comment that was made at the end of the meeting when it was presumed that the meeting was over. And it was from one board member to another. And it was embarrassing and vulgar, to say the least. To hear a board member egg on another board member for acting in an explicit term towards the residents and towards our board, that's not the kind of village we live in. That's not the kind of community we want. I know we're better than that. I know all of you are. And so as a resident, I hope that future conduct changes for the better and sincerely. It was really disheartening to hear what I heard and to know that our board represents us and our board speaks for us, and their words and their actions are a reflection of who we are. And what happened is not a reflection of who most of us are. And so please consider who it is you're associating yourself with and how you're behaving, because you represent all of us. Thank you.
Now, the ordinance, I think, we're following the ordinance with the program.
No, the actual cost share, I think, is what she's referring to, putting that, because right now the ordinance reads that it would be the homeowner's responsibility, and then there would be a 50% cost reimbursement for the concrete portion of the project.
Unless we do it.
Unless we do it.
And we do it, then that's what we're doing. So.
Correct. Is there anybody else?
Yes.
Yes.
Hello.
Hello. Name and address, please.
I'm Angela Trombley-Goralski, and I live at 314 Dickinson in the beautiful village of Romeo. I would just like to piggyback. I was actually going to come up and say the same statement. As a strong woman in this community, I was highly offended by the comments made by Clerk Trapp after the last meeting. And the scariest part to me was that you did not realize it was a hot mic moment. And so in not realizing it was a hot mic moment, it may cause the rest of us to wonder what goes on behind closed doors when you do speak with regard to how you consider your behavior toward the residents. And I agree, this does not represent us, this does not represent our community. And so I also wanted to state my dismay at that. And then it's just kind of been glossed over and everybody went by and it happened, and so what? Like you said, we're better than that here. So I just wanted to be heard on that. Kind of went over the Zoom thing, we talked about that. I just have a question because I haven't been to a board meeting in a while. I've watched some, but can you clarify why board members have to speak through you to speak to each other and can't just directly conduct a forum where they speak to each other?
As part of our rules and procedures, we have adopted Robert's rules. It is as stated in our rules and procedure under discussion and voting that is the procedures that we're going to follow. The adherence to those. And most municipalities follow those same rules. I don't know of any that don't.
Okay.
In fact, most HOAs or boards will follow those as part of their conduct.
Fair enough. I just don't remember seeing that before, but that's fair enough. Okay, I just have one last thing that I would like to speak on. I'm reading because I wanted to make sure that I came across clearly. I've been a resident of this magnificent community for over 18 years and a member of the community at large for over 25 years. Behavior emerging from some individuals in this community is unacceptable and frankly disgusting. I would like to address both Mr. Seidel and Mr. Bartholomew, running for trustee in the upcoming election. And there you go for everybody at home that needs to see it. As a candidate, gentlemen, supported on this flyer by the Committee to Effect Change, it's a political action committee, mailed over the weekend to the voters of Romeo, one is inclined to ask if you also support and represent the inaccurate smear campaign conducted by the very same committee that you are found on this flyer with, against one of your fellow candidates, Steve Goralski, coincidentally also circulated over the weekend. The smear campaign is what I'm speaking of. I'm very angry also, and that's why I'm not speaking well.
Are we allowed to?
I fully understand this is a forum for comments, so my question remains rhetorical. However, if this political action committee who represents you calls for transparency, and that's what they did all weekend, all over social media and through here, asking for transparency, I think it's important for all candidates to be transparent to the voters of Romeo on where they stand with this behavior with the upcoming election so close. Thank you for your time. Best of luck to you in the upcoming election.
Let me just close by saying that this board and the trustees are not permitted by law to use this time to campaign. So they won't be able to offer, I'm not trying to speak for them or censor them in any way, shape, or form. So however they choose to handle it. I can comment from my position. I do not know who that pact is.
I do.
It's well,
Ryan Moore, and he's the owner of Big Red Orchard.
I'm not aware of that. I'm just letting you know. So the village, it does have 6 seats. This is a political climate. It is also disgusting to me, and I agree with you, the comments that we see on social media. I try, honestly, personally, to stay off social media because it's a big black hole. And as long as people put that sort of garbage, for lack of a better word, out there that tears people down instead of finding ways to collaboratively help to build us up, this community will never heal. Whether it's happening in Washington Township or Bruce Township or right here in the village of Romeo, I hope that someday, some way, social media will be used to build everybody up and help us find solutions to the problems that we have instead of constantly putting out negative rumors, gossip, accusations, against the good people that live here in this village. So I agree with your sentiments, and that's my goal. So hopefully that will take place. Is there anybody else? Public comment?
Yes.
Mr. Blanchard.
Yes, Mr. Blanchard, 196 Dickinson Street. Thank you for your time. I just had a question regarding the sidewalks. I understand, I've seen Mr. Bartholomew out walking the streets quite heavily, which I'm sure you're getting a lot of steps. But is he compensated through the city for such acts? And yes, he's qualified because, we all know a trip hazard, but why isn't the DPW marking these and walking with the contractor? I work for a company that does this all the time, and when I'm flagging a cement and I'm bidding it, I'm gonna walk it myself with my orange paint. I'm gonna mark it and I'm gonna carry on. And I'm also gonna walk with the guy that's asking me to do that, which would probably be the DPW. And he would then, when I walk up to one that's a water stop, say, DPW, it's gonna get replaced, mark it there so that I don't bug you with an email at 6:30 in the morning asking about one between me and my neighbor. I understand your answer made a lot of sense to me. Because I'm in the field. I just wonder, is he getting compensated? And if he's directing traffic for a contractor, he's putting you and me at liability because he's not an employee and not covered under their liability. Even if he has his own company, he's not, because that's not his job.
So no, he is not getting compensated. It's strictly volunteer. He is covered under the general liability policy that covers the village, and all of every commission member that sits on a board is all covered underneath that umbrella policy. As far as the DPW, when we walked Main Street, it was myself, the contractor, the DPW supervisor, and then separate was the contractor and Bartholomew. It's just strictly a matter of man hours. Right now, our DPW is overworked trying to leaf vac. right? So they're trying to do some manhole repairs, another municipality, and there's a water main break that, or repair underground that they're trying to take care of and take care of the leaf. So it's just a matter of who's available and the timing that it takes to do it. It's an enormous project to undertake, to get them walked, to get them marked, to send out the letters, to keep the Excel spreadsheet, to then send out and answer additional questions, because I understand that there's, concerns and questions like you presented to me about the stop box. And then we try and send out either Nathan again, or we send out the contractor or DPW supervisor if need be to look at a specific instance, just so that we can keep the process, the project moving forward.
Okay, thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Anybody else for public comment? I don't have Zach here to make a motion to adjourn. Anybody else want the pleasure of that?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, we have a motion to adjourn by Edwards. We have support by Hart. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, meeting adjourned. It is 9:25, 9:24.
Hey, Randy.